Okay, today I'm going to be doing a Redbar Fools tier list. I've got like 80 something guys here. I tried to include everyone that I could remember from the show. If you want to do your own, I'll leave a link in the pinned comment and in the description so you can make your own Redbar Fools tier list. Basically, I've got like 6 tiers here, ranging from guys that I consider to not be fools and maybe they're redeemable, to indifferent, boring / annoying, hate, then can't stand, and then finally, he needs to be, if you know, you know on that one. All right, getting straight into it, we've got Tom Segura, guy from a rich family. Never found this guy funny, or his Your Mum's House podcast. I don't know if it's still the case, but Rogan used to shill this podcast all the time, and even when I was a Rogan fan, I would go and like check this shit out, and it was never my vibe. I don't like him and his wife's dynamic at all. Occasionally it can be funny, like when Mike covers it, when they have like little couples fights or whatever, but generally this like whatever high and tight, low and loose, whatever's going on there, this safe, edgy adult humor that they do on Your Mum's House podcast is just not my vibe, and I don't know. I don't want anything to do with all that. I'm glad that Tim Heidecker is like taking him to task now, Tom Segura, because basically all I've seen from him is him in supercars and getting like a police escort to his private jet. No, really, that's something that he put out for his comedy audience. Yeah, really out of touch guy who never seems to. I've never really heard him talk about his like wealthy upbringing. It's just in like this year that has actually come out because he's been flaunting his wealth so much. Yeah, definitely not someone that I find funny at all. And probably one of my most hated fools. So I would say I can't stand Tom Segura. All right, Joe Rogan. So basically, as I said in my first video covering Redbar, or talking about Redbar, he was like the reason I got into the show pretty much. Was I was a Joe Rogan listener and I got really frustrated with him as a host of his show. I lost all like respect for him, and then basically just searched up trying to find negative Joe Rogan coverage, and that's how I found Redbar. Things have really gone downhill for Rogan in terms of like his full status since he signed the Spotify deal and moved into the red box, that whole debacle, and then moved to his new studio, and he's in Texas, kind of sequestered away now. Yeah, I definitely would say that I hate Joe Rogan. All right, Brian Callen. So Brian Callen is like a funny one because he, I think, gets a pass from a lot of people because his main show, The Fighter and the Kid, Brendan, his co-host, is like more of an obvious fool, I would say, because Brendan is like really dumb. And so Brian kind of gets a lot of wins by default. But in reality, Brian is actually a lot worse. And I can definitely see that from his coverage on Redbar. His like whole man shtick, his obsession with being a manly guy, is just not something that I vibe with at all. Probably would have a similar situation as Tom. He kind of dipped his toe into it, this whole kind of obsession with like riches and being perceived as wealthy, but he's just not as successful as Tom, especially ever since his like cancellation or whatever, which I guess just kind of went away. I never heard any kind of closure on that. Yeah, definitely a panicked, insecure guy when he needs to be, when he decides to be as well, as we saw with like the Bobby Lee situation. This guy freaking out, thinking that Bobby Lee was coordinating an attack on him. Yeah, definitely, I would say that I hate Brian Callen. All right, Bert Kreischer. So I can understand more why Bert Kreischer has an audience. To me, it's like drunk people comedy. I kind of get it. Probably if I was younger when I found it first, I would have enjoyed his machine story. But as it is, that's just not my vibe. And to put it simply, Bert Kreischer is constantly lying on pretty much every appearance that he's on. It's just his thing is just to lie. I guess I've seen some more coverage of him recently where the mask is slipping maybe a bit and he's kind of being a bit more real, but really it's like every other story, like talking about knowing 3 people who've been hit by lightning, and even the machine story as well. It's just like, it's just lie after lie to keep the ball rolling for Bert Kreischer, and you really can't be doing that. So I would say that I hate him as well. Christina P, definitely don't feel as strongly about her as I do her husband. I've seen her stand up a bit. Her stand up sucks. She's particularly bad at that. And just the same kind of criticism I guess I have of the Your Mum's House podcast applies to her as well. Like this, yeah, whatever this like humor that they have going on with them and their fans, it's really gross to me. Like I don't like that, but I would say I couldn't bring myself to say I hate Christina P, to be honest. All right, so Chris D'Elia, I'm going to say right now, is my most hated fool, the person who I guess makes my blood boil the most. So when it comes to Chris D'Elia, I become more of a kind of believe all woman, Me Too movement, I'm with her type guy, because really, like, I do believe the allegations against Chris D'Elia. there's like just too much of a preponderance of like evidence, and it's like or whatever the word is, when there's like just way too much smoke for there not to be fire with him. And yeah, this is a really bad guy. Before he got cancelled, if you were especially like a male fan of Chris D'Elia before he got cancelled, you must just be into getting like degraded or something, because he would start every show with a diatribe about how good he is and how good his life is going. And he was one of these guys who would just shit on his fans, like Santino, who I'll cover in a second, right? Just talks down to his fans or whatever. And he's like, since the cancellation, suffered like some kind of ego death, I guess, where he's had to tone that down a lot. But still, this is like a weird cult leader guy. And, you know, a lot of these guys who get covered on the show, or some get accused of being like cult leaders, or even Mike, like people accuse Mike of being a cult leader or whatever. And with pretty much any other fool that gets covered, I don't really see the actual evidence for that. But with Chris D'Elia, it does seem like he really has the ones that he's got left. He does seem to have this like cult leader kind of mentality and how he likes to conduct himself. And he's got his gross underlings. Like, what was that guy? I forget the opener. I think his name is Michael or something. Michael Lanucci or whatever. Yeah, like this underling that he's chosen, like this really shitty comic that Chris D'Elia has chosen just because he's a yes man for Chris that won't tell on him, basically. Yeah, so he really needs to be. Chris D'Elia is my least favorite, most hated fool that gets covered on the show. Ari Shaffir, I don't have a lot to say about Ari. Apparently, probably was funny a long time ago, but I was not around for it. I would say indifferent. Maybe boring / annoying, because recently when I've seen him, it's just him getting like naked, or him like bombing or not being able to handle himself. Yeah, I believe he was funny a long time ago. But I just don't have that much positive or negative to say about Ari Shaffir. Santino, this is a bad egg. This is a real bad friend, a bad guy, right? That show he does with Bobby Lee, some of the most enraging moments, like when they were covering the I Wanna Be Ninja lady, and all of a sudden racial humor is off the table, except if you're a permitted comic, as Andrew Santino deemed himself. Just like the same criticism that I have of Chris pre-cancellation, I would apply to Andrew Santino, and that is that he is like always talking down to his fans, talking down to his listeners in a really mean-spirited way. Like so the word Italy on Redbar is associated with Andrew Santino, Italy, the country, right? And where that stems from is, I believe it was an Instagram or Twitter exchange where Andrew Santino was wearing some article of clothing, I think it was like a sweater, and one of his fans just commented like, "Hey Andrew, where did you get that?" or whatever, obviously implying like, what store did you buy it from, what brand it is it, because he probably wants one or he thinks it's nice or whatever, right? And Andrew responds, one word, Italy. It's just like a complete dickhead move, like basically implying in that comment that wherever I got it from is none of your concern, because it's out of your tax bracket or whatever. Like it's not for you to say, and you could have just not responded to that. And ever since then, it's like, oh, this is that kind of guy. Like, this isn't just a character on the show that's kind of played up. Like, this is a true dickhead that is not funny to me, but I guess that's beside the point. And has no respect for the listeners. This is just about getting ahead and social climbing, and a lot of the comedians fall into that category as well. Almost down into he needs to be. I would say I can't stand Andrew Santino, but he could really be there as well, depending on, yeah, it could play out that way. So Joey Diaz, I'm going to be honest, like, I do find Joey Diaz funny at times. Like some of his on podcasts and stand-up, he can be funny to me. His only real big problem is that he couldn't handle some, to me, like in terms of Redbar, like pretty light coverage of him initially. Like it was just making fun of him for like admitting to take, like, what was it, Percocet or some kind of drug, the baby ones, what are you talking, Xanax, some kind of drug. It was light, in my opinion. And then it kind of, there might have been some other, like little quips, but he really shouldn't even be aware of that. And all of a sudden he's talking about, oh, Jules is guilty of laughter. Mike, he's talking about like freaking Gardini prop. He's going to set him on Mike, like unironically threatening him in this weird, like, look at the camera and express your insecurities to your audience kind of way. Like, yeah, comics just shouldn't be doing that. And for that, it has to be, I don't know, like I struggle to put him in hate, because I have to put him in hate, because you just can't be doing that to our guy, It's like, yeah, it's just like, it's not actually that it's directed at Mike. It's that he, in that clip, has shown that he doesn't actually play by the rules of we can joke about all of this stuff. It's like, to him, there's stuff that you can say, not threats, there's like stuff you can say to Joey Diaz or about him, and he's going to want to like hurt you over it or have you, yeah, so it's just, yeah, I don't vibe with that. Okay, Tony Hinchcliffe. So all you need, if you want to understand Tony Hinchcliffe in like an hour, just watch Redbar's coverage of the first, I believe they might have made another, but the Kill Tony documentary. A lot of people say, by the way, if you're trying to get someone into Redbar, I've heard this said by multiple people, that a great first clip is the YouTube clip of Mike covering Tony Hinchcliffe's Kill Tony documentary. And really it's Mike breaking down the way that Tony actually sees himself. He is one of these people who sees himself as like God's gift to comedy, as a progenitor of this genre of roast comedy, right? And it's like he's playing a game that no one else is actually really playing. Like no one else is actually trying to take that mantle from you, Tony. Like no one actually cares that you're the roast master or whatever. But I mean, maybe some of his underlings are confused into that. Really mean to the guy next to him, Redban, and just is stylistically possibly the worst fool as well. Like recently was caught tucking a vest, like a quilted gilet or a puffer vest, into a belt. I'm into, looking at fashion and style, whatever, right? Like whatever you want to say about me, that's fine in that regard. But I do look at a lot of it, and I can tell you that I have not seen that attempted by even like the most cringe Instagram fashion influencers. Like the ones that really are just trying anything to put together a unique fit or a way of doing things. I've not seen the puffer vest into belt combination. That was a unique madness from Tony Hinchcliffe. So yeah, I hate him. I mean, I don't hate him for that, but yeah, I hate him in general. All right. Brian Redban, one of the guys I possibly think about the most in terms of, I guess, fools. He's kind of a fool. He was more of a fool in the past. Basically, the thing with Brian Redban, in some ways, incredibly lucky to be where he is, because he does suck at his job. If his job is to control the audio of Kill Tony, and it was to control the audio and the production of the Joe Rogan Experience when he's on it, he sucks at that job. Like, Kill Tony, sometimes I checked in on it at the start of COVID, I think. I would check in on it, and I had to turn the show off because of the audio. I very rarely would have to do that. Like Kill Tony as a show, it kind of works, but I prefer not to listen to it one episode because the audio that Redban was responsible for was that bad. Now, having said that, like he's lucky to be in his position in that way, but he's also quite unlucky in other ways because he had a big hand in the founding of the Joe Rogan Experience. I talk to different people about this, and it's like apparently he's running Joe Rogan's like forums. He's like basically the head janitor for that, the moderator or whatever. Like a big part of transferring Joe Rogan from wherever he was into someone with this online presence is Brian Redban. And then other comedians say the same, that like Ari Shaffir has even said that Brian Redban set him up in terms of podcasting and the online stuff, right? But if you look at where Joe is now, like what, a billionaire maybe? At least $100 million from Spotify. We all know that, right? And then you look at where Brian Redban is, you'd think that he would be a bit further along. But I guess it's all kind of swings and roundabouts, right? Like, all things considered, I'm going to say indifferent because I really have not a lot negative. Like in his current state, I don't have a lot of negative thoughts towards Brian Redban. Jeremiah Watkins, definitely annoying. Pretty much, yeah, I don't like his shtick. Like sometimes it works kind of incidentally. I'll tell you what, like there was one time that Jeremiah Watkins made me laugh, and that was his coverage of George Floyd. It was that post BLM, that BLM Jeremiah Watkins. Okay, that's when I found him funny, but that was not meant to be funny. And that's all I can really say about Jeremiah Watkins. If you want to laugh at something he's put out, and look up, I assume it's still online, look up Jeremiah Watkins BLM, and him like posing nude with body paint on, I think, and he's like a turtle, and it's his kid. It's like some weird baby photo. Like I guess I giggled at that. But again, I'm pretty sure that's mostly incidental. Anyway, David Lucas and William Montgomery will always be intertwined in my mind, because some of my favorite coverage or favorite segments on Redbar were the coverage initially of Brothers in Cursive, the podcast that these two did together. At the start, it was like Redban trying to maintain that, while Redban kind of knows that the whole thing, there's like a fake Brothers in Cursive Facebook group that Mike or Bring Back group listeners of Redbar have set up, right? And these two are like half aware. Like David Lucas is not aware that there's this fake group, that it's fake. William Montgomery is suspicious. Brian Redban is aware, I think, but doesn't want to say anything because he doesn't know how to express it, and also maybe wants them to think that they have a real group because it would show that there's like a genuine audience for this podcast. And it was just incredibly funny, like the coverage of all this and trying to create a rift between David Lucas and William Montgomery. In their current form, I recently saw an episode of Kill Tony, and it seems like at the start of every episode, David Lucas is just going to make the same jokes about Tony Hinchcliffe in about a million different ways. Like, what, Tony's gay, Tony's a twink, or Tony is like physically small. It's like, and then Tony will just fire back, David Lucas is fat, or something alluding to him being black or whatever in the soft kind of way, right? Where Tony isn't going to go as hard as he did, I guess, at that one time, but he really did go hard in that Asian guy and then caused some trouble. Anyway, like, it just seems like the same jokes. I would say I'm actually kind of annoyed by David Lucas at the moment, but also I'd kind of rather have him around. And also, like, allegations of joke thievery coming out recently. I don't know what's up with that, but I guess we'll see. Whereas William, I'm almost going to say redeemable. Like, I'm just going to be honest, like, whenever I see William in small, very small doses, I never seek it out, but whenever I see it, I usually laugh at whatever's going on with William Montgomery. I don't know, at first when I saw him and it was Brothers in Cursive, I thought I didn't like him, right? Obviously, right? It was kind of not a good start, but overall, William Montgomery, I would say a fool, so to speak, but I would say redeemable for William Montgomery. Sam Tripoli, just like Joey Diaz, in fact, worse than Joey Diaz, he committed one cardinal sin against the show, I guess, right? Sam Tripoli, in response to simply being covered, and to be fair, heavily made fun of, like, really, Mike did go after him and his disabled kids in, I'll be honest, one of my favorite segments on the entire show. But the Tears in Heaven cover, that's on YouTube. Look up Redbar Tears in Heaven or Redbar Sam Tripoli Kids or whatever, and just enjoy. But not suitable for work or whatever, not safe for work or whatever. All right. So, like, but in response to that, Sam Tripoli decides to come to what he thinks is Mike's address. That to me is signs of like a mental break, because like, what's the plan there? You know what I mean? Like even if you're, you know, one of these people who believe that sometimes it is fair to respond with violence or whatever. Like, I mean, I don't agree with that. But even if you did, like, I don't understand what just turning up at Mike's address and advertising you're doing that is actually gonna serve by that. Like, did he want a conversation? I guess we'll never know. But apparently Mike was saying that he arrived on the doorstep but didn't even knock. So maybe it was just for show, which in some ways is kind of worse. I'm going to say I can't stand him. He could be down there. This is a bad dude. Outside of all that, I don't find him funny at all. Hangs around with Josh Denny. He's intertwined with Josh Denny. And anyone who doesn't look at Denny and immediately is like, okay, like, yeah, get fucked, basically, is like, yeah, you're a fool, man. Like, you're very low on the list. Whitney Cummings, I would say indifferent. Sometimes I do find her funny. Whoever, like, Mike calls him her Benton, but I know that's not his actual name, the little gay assistant on her podcast. Like, sometimes she'll get snappy with him. She'll get, like, bitchy with him, and I actually find that very funny. Like, that's the mode that I want her in, kind of speaking freely. And I like when she has, like, a pseudo kind of mental break. Like, when she, what is it? It was, like, there was, like, the California wildfires, and she went to, like, try and save a horse, and she was cleaning its sheath. You know what that is, right? And that to me was very funny, but I don't know how intentional that was. If she was in that mode more often, I would say not even a fool. But as it is, like, still has some foolish tendencies, was part of, like, the phone scam on her listeners where she, the listeners, like, gave her, like, she was advertising to her listeners that, oh, send me your phone number and we're going to chat, whatever. And of course the listeners got mad when, of course, it's just like it's a scam to farm the listeners' information. Like, maybe it's not a scam in the technical sense, but the way it's presented is to get people's information, their phone number, to use for promotional purposes, which was not what was advertised. Maybe in the fine print. Anyway, and I don't fuck with that. But yeah, overall, I would say indifferent to Whitney Cummings. Checking we're still recording. All right. Theo Von. Okay, so in my mind, like, Mike often says with some of these guys, like, this is what a comedian should be. And it's not that Theo Von, like, I feel that way about Theo Von, but it's not that he's, like, the best of all time or whatever. But I do like Theo Von as the character. I can see why it has mass appeal. Obviously, when him and his he has his fans call in and they, like, copy him and they talk in a fake Southern accent, but they're not aware of it. Like, they mirror him and they talk about their mental health. Obviously, that's not for me. That's fucking cringe. Like, I'm not down with that at all. But in terms of just, I'll see, like, if I'm on TikTok or Instagram Reels and I'll see Theo Von making fun of something or telling one of his stories, or he did like an interview with like Sexy Red. And I enjoyed the back and forth there. So I would say I get a kick out of Theo Von's character. I think that this is, like, sure, he's not the best in the world, but like, this is what a comedian should be, so to speak. If more of them were like Theo Von and, I don't know, spent some time actually kind of developing something like that. I don't know if it's so intentional, but like, if more comedians were like him, basically, I would be a bigger fan of stand-up comedy. Eric Griffin, I actually don't have that much to say about him. All I know is that his wife works at either like Target or Kmart, and that was kind of the extent of the coverage that I've seen of him. There's probably some other stuff. He's often in the background with some really bad guys. Like, I'm pretty sure what was it, the King, the Wing, and the Sting, and then there's someone else. I don't know, man. But there was some other stuff with him, like being in podcasts with bad dudes. But him himself, I don't actually have that much to say. I would say, I have to say indifferent. Like, I just don't know that much about Eric Griffin, to be honest. Shane Gillis. I have always hated Shane Gillis since he got the gig on SNL. Basically, if you're not aware, the story is he got offered or was announced as a newest cast member on SNL, and then was promptly cancelled, removed from that role because they found some really low-level, like, basic, nothing, like just some really stock standard Chinese, Asian racial humor on an old podcast episode he did. And now, you could say that, like, already the decision for him to go on SNL is like a foolish move, because I would kind of agree. Like, you shouldn't want to be on that show. You shouldn't look at like who's on there. I don't watch it, but like Pete Davidson's on there and other the big fat girl. There's a bunch of them. Anyway, you shouldn't want to be on that as a comedian like Shane. But all the same, I could still forgive it if he just stood up for himself and he said, yeah, that's my comedy. Like, it's a joke. And either you can like take it or leave it. But he didn't. He deleted the episodes. He provided a really kind of lukewarm, half and half, I kind of still want to be in the industry kind of response to that, where he was like, hey, everyone tells bad jokes, or everyone, not everything's going to hit. And it's like, no, you just like say it with your chest. You know what I mean? Like, you find that funny, you still do. And anything less than that is pandering to the, that's a Mikeism, panderment. That's like is you just trying to play both sides, trying to be this edgy guy who does racial humor and also get mainstream gigs. And I do believe he is above that, but it showed to me that it's just like spineless. So like, I hate him. I wouldn't say quite can't stand, because like, again, he is like kind of good at comedy, right? So to speak. But yeah, I just don't respect that kind of guy who does that. Tim Dillon is actually kind of similar, whereas he has this audience who maybe wants some more of the edgy stuff, and he'll play in both worlds, because he'll engage with that. But then also I see him in more kind of mainstream stuff as well. Like, I think here he's on like Diary of a CEO podcast or whatever. Not to say that, you can't do edgy comedy and be on other shows, but I do feel with him, like, he's paid very well by his audience to give them that. And then I forget what it is, to be honest, but I just also do see him in more kind of mainstream stuff as well. Like, I'd rather him just stand up for himself. And I will say, like, it gets hinted at on the show, but like, I've heard bad things about Tim Dillon as well. Like, I think Mike has heard this, but there's not enough to like even say it. I've heard it on Twitter. Anyway, but I can't even say anything. Nothing confirmed on that. Fuck it, put him there. Actually, no, I put him there because I think, like, having said all that pretty much negative stuff, Tim Dillon, now he can still go there because he could do so much more. He has so much at his disposal. All right, Logan and Jake Paul. Okay, I don't want to talk too much about these guys. You can get Logan Paul coverage from anywhere. Just straight up, though, this is like an evil, bad dude. Like, this is a terrible person, and his brother can go there as well. Like, guys had plenty of chances. Most recently, suing CoffeeZilla essentially for just exposing his CryptoZoo scam. Anyone who tries to defend him, or tries to interact with him, is just like, part of the problem. And I believe his brother is more evil but less smart, so has less of an impact. But just that's like a bad kid, man. All right, Mike Malak. Okay, probably second to Chris D'Elia. Second most hated, maybe Danny is in those. Anyway, Mike Malak, he needs to be, man. Like, so this is one of these guys who is like, on Twitter, you can count on Mike Malak to provide the most milquetoast, for the culture, Kendrick Lamar beat Drake, whatever, like whatever the standard thing. Adam 22 used to do this. It's like, here, I'm a white guy who's part of the culture though, and I can give the allowed take from a guy in that position and keep my spot and have people nod their head at me or whatever. Like, just the definition of a social climber, the beanbag salesman who somehow convinces Logan Paul to take him into his team. That's nuts, and that, shame on you, Logan Paul, for falling for that. But Mike Malak got very lucky that Mike David got sick when he did, because it was about to be the long summer. If he didn't, it was a lot that was gonna, like, it was basically gonna be a whole summer of Mike Malak coverage, Hey Big Mike coverage. Yeah, this is a terrible, terrible person. All right, George Janko. When he was first covered on the show, I found him kind of cute, and I liked a couple of his songs. You know, liked it kind of. I wouldn't choose to listen to it, but some of them were catchy. But I definitely don't actually like George Janko. Like, most recently, right? He's complaining about his treatment on Impulsive and complaining about Bobby Lee essentially like essaying him or sexually assaulting him. I hate it when people say essay. Right? Like, and then a week later, he's on Bobby Lee's show and everything's all good, but just because he asked him on. And so it's like, so again, it's like, this is just another one of these social climber guys. Nothing actually matters. He has this like weird version of Christianity that he adheres to, which allows him to indulge in all of this debauchery as well. Yeah, definitely would say that I hate George Janko. This is like Megamind and Alan Imholt. I don't know why I separated these two. Probably should be in the same one. I'll say with Megamind, I don't know why she's kept that haircut. That's all I can say. Like, I mean, like, you could look at me and say you're not the one to talk with hair, but all I can say is this is intentional, right? I choose to look this way. And like her hairline, right, as a girl, why would you choose to have a haircut that shows off that kind of hairline? Like, I don't know what she needs to do. Like, maybe she can push it forward in some way, have a fringe, or like, what is it, bangs, or like just switch it up. And the early 2000s makeup, the way she dresses, this like Ed Hardy kind of like it does work for. Actually, you know what? I almost got too deep into something that you guys probably do not care about. Okay, Megamind, boring, annoying, and her husband is definitely a bad dude, but he, unless it's like the main kind of, like, I did enjoy Redbar's coverage of Alan Imholt, but in terms of what's happening with him right now, that's probably for people like Melton to stay on top of. Kind of similar with Mersh, but I will say Mersh, when he was on the show, in my opinion, was a better fool than Alan. Well, no, they're different, but it's like the Mersh coverage, the $375, when Mersh was given, donated $375 by Mike, and he somehow managed to stretch it for like a month. Like, he used that $375 to upgrade his BMW. He went out to dinner a couple of times. He got a haircut. He bought a shelf. He bought other upgrades to his podcast studio. Like, I forget what it was, but like $375 has never stretched so far. And that was just some of the funniest, like, best segments on Redbar that I can even remember. Like, Mersh was a great fool, great in small doses. I don't know if we'll be seeing him anymore. This is kind of property of Melton, or I don't know who, Dabbleverse, Jesse PS, like, type guy now, I guess. I don't know, but Mike has like released him. I can't even say I hate Mersh, but like, yeah, this is a very low level guy, and some of the funniest like moments was him being covered on the show. All right, Joe Matarese. Okay, so I was thinking about this recently, right? So basically, one of my favorite listeners of the show, Danny Woodward, was temporarily removed from the Bring Back group for threatening Joe Matarese. And this was on the show. This is all like part of the show, right? But he was actually removed from the group. However, I was listening back to the start of the Joe Matarese saga on Redbar, and the very first response that Joe had to just being made fun of by Mike was, "Have you seen Goodfellas?" implying like some kind of veiled threat towards Mike. So in my mind, this kind of vindicates like Danny Woodward, right? Like, for threatening him back, because if I remember correctly, it wasn't even like a direct threat. It was just like, I'm going to come to your comedy club or whatever. And it was like clearly a joke. Whereas Joe Matarese's first response was actually to threaten Mike in this weird way, this weird, whatever, Goodfellas, whatever mafioso type way that Joe falls into. Nowadays, Joe's just really like kind of peeled out just lax dad. I do often think with Joe Matarese as well, though, like if my dad started to engage in these kind of activities, I would like freak the fuck out. Like that would be terrible. If my dad was pursuing like this failing social media comedy career and trying all new different tactics instead of just sticking to doing comedy, which apparently works and pays the bills for Joe. So yeah, Joe Matarese is kind of nuts. I can't even bring myself to say I hate him though. The coverage of Joe Matarese is great. Michael Ray Bauer, almost below the show. The one person who I've heard Mike talk about that Michael Ray Bauer, he actually feels bad covering Michael Ray Bauer because this is a borderline disabled person, to be honest. Possibly could consider him disabled. Still making cooking videos in his Bauer box that somehow always end up in the bathroom. I feel like, yeah, cooking videos should never end up in that part of the house, but they always do with him. Yeah, it doesn't really get covered that much anymore. He does that, like the reason why I'm not indifferent and it goes to boring, annoying. Actually, no, he can be indifferent, but he does have like a mean streak when he's dealing with other tards or whatever, right? Like a Wet Movie One, or he kind of alphas them, which is kind of funny, but also kind of mean. Sebastian Maniscalco, don't have actually that much to say. I would say boring, and it's definitely annoying. I would never choose to listen to Italian-American specific comedy. Him letting Joe Matarese open for him was like probably the highlight of his cover. Actually, no, Boost Wire, when he was on the sneaker shopping episode and he outed himself as really out of it, pretended to be like a sneakerhead, pretended that he grew up with these shoes, but didn't really know the first thing about him. Yeah, that was funny, but I don't have that strong opinions about Sebastian Maniscalco. Jeff Leach doesn't really get covered much at all anymore. This is a mean dude, actually, like in how he's responded to the show. Really cringe. This is one of the most cringe fools when he does get covered. He's just got it in him. Like everything, his whole mannerisms. I remember the theory was with him that Mike had was that Jeff Leach actually isn't even from the UK. He's actually like an American guy who's just putting on this accent, which I always found really funny. Yeah, I don't have that strong opinions about him. Okay, Sarah Weinschenk. I just have to be honest. The Sarah Weinschenk podcast is probably the most boring comedian podcast that there is. There's like a 2-minute intro from every episode. I've checked on a few of them, right? Every episode is like a 2-minute intro of her doing this same meandering bit, and then it's just a girl yapping to a camera about her life and whatever for like an hour, and not in an interesting way. Like you cannot listen to the Sarah Weinschenk podcast. But I don't have that. Yeah, not too strong of feelings about her. Lex, I used to really hate though, because I thought that it was all a bit. I thought that Lex's like being into love and being so sincere or whatever was just him trying to ingratiate himself with like Rogan and the Weinsteins and all these other guys. But what I've now realized is that's actually how Lex Fridman is. I still don't like him. I would still say that I do hate him. But there was a time where he was like really one of my least favorite people because I thought it was all fake. But actually, Lex is actually just like that. Rick Glassman can be very funny, but wouldn't play ball with Mike at all. He can be fun, like when he had Brendan Schaub on the show and he just decided halfway through he was just going to start making fun of Brendan. That was funny. He has it in him, and his interactions with his family, while cringe and very weird, I do get a kick out of that, but kind of only when Mike's covering it. So yeah, that's Rick Glassman. Howie Mandel, I'm kind of indifferent to. He does seem kind of mean. I just don't know that enough about him. And he kind of reacted positively to being covered on the show. Yeah, I don't have that much to say about him. Pete Davidson. I do hate Pete Davidson, but pretty much everyone, like outside of select few people, hate Pete. So I don't even need to really talk about him. Sam Morril. Okay, so he was part of one of probably the worst piece of comedian content that I can think of, that being Couples Quarantine, him and Taylor Tomlinson. Shame on you, Sam Morril. Just for that, you're hated. Otherwise, it'd probably be the boring. And actually, no, I do hate this kind of guy. Like, Mike always talks about how he's like this New York, Mr. Saturday Night, but he's also stands up for women or whatever, and he was dating like Beth Stelling or some shit. Like, he dates all the female comics, and he's this suave kind of guy, and then they wake up in the morning and they realize, oh, this is not actually like who I thought it was. Anyway, that's Samuel. Josh Denny, obviously, he needs to be. So, like, it's a thing right now, like, it's kind of cringe to use psychologist terms, right, and to pathologize people and to determine that a person has this, like, this person's a narcissist or whatever. Like, this is the thing. It's cringe to do that. But with Josh Denny, I'm comfortable to say that this is a pathological liar. This is a liar in terms of this is how this person gets by in life. Lies just for the sake of lying, pretty much. Once lied about having been in a plane crash on Patrick Melton's podcast, and later admitted to Patrick that he simply lied about it just to have something to say. That was his words exactly, like, just to have something to say. So you could at least say with like Steve Renazizi, right? He told the lie once and he used it to kind of create this career around himself, and he stuck to the one lie about being in 9/11. With Josh Denny, he lied about being in a plane crash, literally just to have something to tell Melton, and surely there wasn't more than 10 or 12 people in the chat. Like, that to me shows, okay, this is a person who lies as a way of life, and no other kind of fool I can think of actually is on that level. So yeah, Josh Denny, this is a bad dude, and whatever, pathological compulsive liar. Nikki Glaser, feel kind of sorry for this lady. Seems like one of the female comics who's kind of at odds with her place in life and kind of insecure. I would say boring/annoying. Definitely don't find her funny, but I just find it kind of pathetic, like her talking about relationships and stuff, and the whole idea that she just hasn't figured it out yet. I hope it works out. Big Jay Oakerson. Okay, so he is deep in the obeyment list. He reacts really positively anytime Redbar is brought up. He talks positively about the show, and even his coverage he doesn't seem to mind. And he has committed himself to this grunge aesthetic with the fingerless gloves and the spiky hair and the facial hair, whatever. This kind of Deftones looking guy, right? Like, it's not for me, but I almost at this point respect it. And he's got this like freaky lifestyle. Like, I think he's got like some kind of open marriage situation. Him and his wife, they go to like swingers parties and eat food there. So I mean, like, it's just, he is being himself, at least I can say at the end of the day. I have to put him in indifferent, even if I don't respect any of that or vibe with any of that stuff. At this point, I think he's earned it. Dave Smith, on the other hand, this is a bad egg. Like, this is like a libertarian guy, and as I've said before, I'm not like into politics or that informed, but when I hear someone say that they're like a libertarian or like a communist, or they've got some like fringe niche political opinion, to me it seems like that would almost be a full-time job to be able to actually defend that and confidently say that that's yourself. And it doesn't vibe with me that should be, or it doesn't compute in my head that same person could also be a funny stand-up comic. And having seen Libertas, his special, and every time Legion of Skanks get brought up on the show, it's been proven right. This is not a guy that I find funny. If you want some cringe, hate-watching comedy to listen to or watch Libertas by Dave Smith. I would say I can't stand Dave Smith, actually. Ethan and Hila Klein. I have no respect for these people, especially Ethan. Basically, Ethan has got himself in a position kind of similar to Tim Heidecker, as I found, but with Ethan, it's actually way worse, where he can't have fun, he can't be himself or enjoy himself because his audience has him by the balls. And he was kind of the person that I've noticed this the most. Like, and what happened recently, like his breakup with Hassan was not because like the audience changed or because Hassan changed or whatever. It was because Ethan, unbeknownst to even himself, has cultivated this militant Twitter artist type audience, that's now your people, Ethan Klein, and you can take it or leave it, but that's what you have. You've cultivated that, and they're not going to be down with any kind of deviation from what they've deemed acceptable for you to believe and to you to say on your show. And I don't like anyone who cultivates that kind of audience, because to me it's not reality and it's not someone being themselves. And Hila can go there right next to her husband. I hate Teddy Fresh with a passion. Recently, I checked in on the stuff that they've just put out. Every single piece of the new Teddy Fresh July collection is derivative of some micro trend or some other brand. Like, it's not just influence, it's literally just like take something that another brand has put out and alter it just slightly and make it really cheap and shitty. And that's Teddy Fresh. Awful. At one point, I would like to do a deep dive and really go after Teddy Fresh. I don't know if there's any market for that, but possibly my least favorite brand. Michaela Peterson. Okay, so when I knew that this was a bad egg was when she released her Lions Club, Lions Lair group. She went to Romania, right? Met up with Tate, pre-Tate being what he is now. And with him put together this like dodgy ClickFunnels website, which was like $1,000 or some $800, like some significant amount of money to join this group, which was essentially a group that she'd already put out for free for the followers of her her Lions carnivore diet plan. It was just a group where they're going to discuss the carnivore diet. And for some reason, it needed to be like $800 or like some crazy recurring fee. Later denied that Tate had anything to do with it when his name was in the fine print or whatever. Very clearly had just and Tate is like the king of these like ClickFunnels things. Like he was selling similar ones about whatever his initial business, like a cam girl business that he'd set up, right? Very clearly actually had collaborated with him on this. And her audience is simply these lost boys, Jordan Peterson's, guys who have said, oh, this is his daughter, so they're going to hook onto that. And he also talks about the carnivore shit. This is a bad girl. This is, not a woman that you want to be associating with or taking any kind of advice from either. Also with her looks and her relationships with men as well, very, very strange. Like her looks will change drastically. And then recently she's claimed that the only reason for her change in looks was like a new camera or like a new setting on the camera, when it's very clear that it's either had work done or something is off with her look. Sometimes she comes in very Russian. Michaela Peterson, I would say I hate Michaela Peterson. Shame on her. Andrew Schultz. Cannot stand Andrew Schultz. This is a money guy who has a bunch of yes men around him in this awful, awful podcast. Him and Akash Singh. Just tell, like, if you don't, like, look at this haircut, man. Like, look at this facial hair. Like, if you don't look at this and think, oh, this is like a bad dude. Like, this is a shockster or whatever. Like, this is not a good dude, right? If you don't immediately see that, then I don't know, we're just different people, because Andrew Schultz, and like things were with him, like scamming his fans over a comedy special that he put out that was supposedly dropped by the streaming provider. He charged his fans for and then released it for free. That was very Melton-esque, it seemed. Gino, Flat Broke Gino. Okay, so I once heard what was he called? Kevin Brennan talk about how Gino, because Gino does like all of the crazy racial humor. Like he will, say the N-word. He will say crazy shit, right? But Gino has nothing to lose. So it doesn't really mean anything. Like up until recently when Compound merged or whatever, he's just on Compound, a racist network, right? Run by Kumia, like an evil guy, Kumia. I don't know how hard I can go in on Kumia. And Gino is like living in the project. He has roommates. He has a bunch of roommates. It's just him and his little cat. And there's nothing to lose. Like there's no lower that Gino can go. So him saying anything really, it carries no weight. And I will say, like, occasionally he's incidentally funny. Like when he got belligerently drunk, which was a few times on the show, sometimes he will just say something that I do find funny, but I don't think he's aware of it. I can't stand Gino. Bill Schultz, I feel sorry for Bill Schultz. Poor guy. I have to put him in indifferent. This is a very pathetic guy, and I don't know how long we have left with Bill. Doesn't really get covered on the show much anymore. The early coverage of him, what is his morning show, whatever, that was kind of cute. But also I can see why he's not around much anymore. Bill Burr. Okay, so sometimes Mike will choose on the show to actually break down exactly what is going on in a situation, and actually he will talk in depth about it. And one of the best times, or my favorite times he did this, was talking about Bill Burr and what actually changed with him, and how Bill Burr could have, when he married Nia, he could have like incorporated that and kind of made fun of the situation, incorporated that into his personality and announced the change and made it into something that he can enjoy with his fans. But instead, it never gets talked about in that way. It's like off limits. And because he didn't bring the audience along with him for that, that's where he really went wrong. And I do believe it's out of insecurity. It's out of fear. And I think that shows, like when he was talking to Theo Von, and Theo was saying, "Oh, I'm worried if when I get bigger, if some exec or some television person is going to try and change my essence or change my bits." He was like genuinely concerned about that. And Bill just had no time for that concern, because I just don't think he has those kind of thoughts. So that really negatively kind of impacted how I see him. He still can be funny. I can't bring myself to say I hate him. I'll just put him there, whatever. But that doesn't accurately describe. I don't find him boring or annoying. It's more complicated with Bill Burr. Bill Maher, I have to put as indifferent. I really don't know a lot about Bill Maher. All I've seen is the times that Club Random has been covered on Redbar. What I've seen, he seems like a low-level kind of sex pest, kind of pressures the girls a bit, which can be funny. It's not. I mean, it's kind of harmless. He's kind of this harmless old man, but he is. I like the Club Random segments, but I don't know that much about Bill Maher. Brandon Wardell, however, okay, I really can't stand this kind of guy. I see this guy, like these internet guys, like, I see him similar to like a Bo Burnham type character, where a guy like Brandon Wardell or Bo Burnham, they act as if they are like these internet people that are like one of us in that sense, like, you know, they're deep in the whatever, they're deep into it, but actually, in my opinion, is like a tourist, right? Like, I guess this is more a criticism of Bo Burnham, but he rarely gets brought up, but it's like, he, to me, strikes me as someone who sees himself as born at the right time. He can take this cultural critique of the internet and people, you know, born between Gen Z and millennials or whatever, and he can look at it and he can really articulate, like, finger on the pulse. He knows how it is to be that person, and to me, it just could not be further from reality. Like, I'm sure that there are some good observations in it, but to me, it completely fails to grapple with the reality of that. And it's like a fake internet guy, and I consider Brandon Wardell to be like that as well. And just a tourist to the online world. Not to get too specific, but yeah, I would say I hate Brandon Wardell. All right, Stavros. So I think a lot of people have said this, but just the name Cumtown, I never wanted to look into that further. A lot of people say it's funny, but I just have never listened to it. So all I can judge Stavros on is, I will say I listened to Bastard Radio with Nick Mullen and Louis J. Gomez and Tim Dillon. I did find that funny. But I would say more so for the other two. But anyway, Stavros, all I can judge him on is what I've seen, like, on the show, and then a bit recently since Cumtown. And to me, I do not find that shit funny. It's not my kind of comedy, I guess. I don't know what the deal is, and I will say, to me, it is just kind of cringe to be that big, and his whole look with the Hawaiian shirts and the hair is really gross to me, but if I found him funny, I would excuse that. I would say boring, annoying. I just don't know that much about him, and I'm not going to go back and listen to Cumtown, sorry. Melton. All right, so I have to give some props to Melton, because for the longest time on the show, Melton is known as the sixth god, right? He's got the 6 listeners left, if that. And basically, he is someone that if you'd asked me a year ago, I would say that no way is Melton ever going to make a full-time living or any kind of living off his show ever again. However, thanks to Steel Toe, I guess, and just pure like brute force of will, recently I've heard that Melton had like 1,000 or 1,200 people in his live stream while he's covering Steel Toe. People who are in the 6 listener lane, the 6 listener range for as long as Melton was, they don't usually ever break out of that. I guess he's the exception to the rule. Back in the day, he did kind of low-key scam his fans, like $10,000, $15,000 for promised content for his trip to Edinburgh. That never came out, but I guess just like, I can't say I hate him because it's just been so long since that. I've kind of forgotten a lot. I need to go back. I'm about to go back, I think, and listen to Melton Watch again. I can't put him in a different, I would say boring, annoying. The reason why boring, annoying is because still, right, if Steel Toe ever does anything again that is like actually worth covering and Mike isn't live, or Redbar isn't live, right, I still wouldn't recommend watching along with Melton. Like, I can't listen or watch Melton. I would say if where is he? If Kevin Brennan is live, I'd say that's the better choice. Melton's show still does suck, but hey, he's pulled himself out from where he was. Adam 22, in my mind, is where he is, like Mike Malak now is where Adam 22 was, and I used to hate him when he was like this culture guy. Anytime a rapper died or there was some kind of beef, Adam 22 would give the safe white hip-hop guy opinion that allows him to stay in his spot. So I feel kind of similar to Mike Malak, but I don't hate him as much. This is kind of an evil guy from what I've like heard of Adam 22. He's done some bad things, but I couldn't even say I hate him. I just don't think about him enough. I would say boring/annoying now. In his current state, he's kind of been kicked from that role. And I just don't really, I don't have that strong opinions about him. Steve-O, however, I can't stand Steve-O. I would rather just never hear about him again. I don't have that much to say. The voice, I can't stand the voice. And I just don't like it. This is the guy who's just doing the rounds on podcast, and that's just allowed because of the level of celebrity he has or whatever. I don't ever want to hear from Steve-O again. Anthony Cumia. This is a truly evil person. I don't know what the rules are. I don't want to get in trouble. If you can you say someone is a pedophile for being caught following 12, 13-year-old underage girls, not related to him. This is caught doing this by Mike. Okay, Anthony Cumia, it's confirmed he was following these girls, and then when it's called out, he unfollows them. No explanation is ever given. He still has mainstream connections somehow. I guess he has connections to like Rogan, and it all stems from that. And Rogan is maybe too big to be aware, but probably knows. But there's some bad, like, if all you need to do is check Anthony Cumia's Twitter on any given day, and you'll see where this guy is at. The Count, this is a really, really bad dude, and he deserves his spot down. This is a terrible, terrible person. Kevin Brennan. Okay, so in my mind, like, I've never checked in on it, to be completely honest. This like Dabbleverse sub below Redbar that kind of like, in my mind, Kevin Brennan is like the head of that. Like, he is like, you've got him and like Chad Zumach or whatever, like, and he is like, he controls that. And he is the one guy who is kind of, if you had to pick any of them, he would be the one. I'm going to say indifferent to Kevin Brennan. I find him funny sometimes. Him like trying to fight Dave Landau was funny back in the day. But yeah, in my mind, he's like in control of that. But all of that is just like very far under Redbar. And occasionally, if it bubbles up to a certain level, then maybe it will get covered on the show. But otherwise, he is just kind of, yeah, the watchdog. He keeps that in check and farms that or whatever. H. Foley. Don't like looking at this guy. I really hate this Are We Garbage podcast. This thing, if any podcast was like an industry plant or like a fake setup thing, just designed to have a softball, easy interview for any comedian that wants it, that would be the Are We Garbage podcast. Really don't like this. It seems to have come out of nowhere. Now a massive podcast that can get pretty much any comedian guest, and they're just going to have a good time, and he will just play ball with them. I really don't like this H. Foley guy and this Are We Garbage. I would say I can't stand this guy. I forget what the other one's name is. It's so irrelevant, but like this one, I know this guy's face, and yeah, that's a bad show. Ryan Katsu, I'd have to say indifferent. I feel sorry for Ryan Katsu. He hitched his wagon to the wrong guy in Gavin McInnes, and he's just forever going to pay the price of being too agreeable, too nice to anyone who will be nice to him. I know a lot of people have said that. Steven Crowder, this is a really bad dude. I'm not a political guy. I know he's a heavily political person, but ignoring politics, I can't stand Steven Crowder. I feel like even if you agree with him, you should see that this is like a farce. Someone to me that even before I saw him covered on Redbar, to me is like a closeted gay guy. Like, I know everyone says that, but that's what I believe. And Steven Crowder, yeah, the skits, cringe, bad. Anyway. Taylor Tomlinson, I don't hold her as accountable as I do Samuel for Couples Quarantine. I'm going to put her in boring/annoying. Her comedy, everything, I've never laughed at. Like, this is not a good comic to me. This sucks at that. But I believe it's Samuel's fault. Like, he's the one who kind of knows better and would have looked at Couples Quarantine and said, yeah, let's post that. Whereas she is just kind of like playing along at something to do at the start of COVID. They're all freaking out, these comedians at the start of COVID. Janis Pappas, more of a new fool in terms of him being covered on the show. Reacted really poorly to it, talking about throwing our poor Mike into ceiling fans, etc. And he's one of these comedians who has fallen into this, we're into history or dead presidents, like, who is it? Shane Gillis and Colin Quinn, and Shane Gillis has like dragged Louis C.K. into this. I don't know what behooves these comedians to think that it's a good idea to get into the history of presidents or history and stuff. It's just, that's not my thing at all. I would say I hate this guy. Yeah, he reacted really badly to being covered. Joe List, can't stand Joe List. Kind of similar to Steve-O in that. I just don't even like thinking about this guy. This guy's face pisses me off, man. Yeah, he makes these like short films. He's like an art guy as well as a comic. Probably also falls into that thing where the comedians, they get caught up in the presidents and stuff. I haven't seen it from him, but he hangs out with those guys as well. They get caught up in presidents and history and stuff, whatever. Doug Stanhope, I believe, was funny at one point, but I was not around for that. Initially reacted poorly to coverage on the show, but he kind of mellowed out. I just find this guy kind of annoying. Whenever I hear his voice, I just find that guy kind of annoying. Steve 911, I just didn't want to look up how to spell when it's easy, but everyone knows this guy. Yeah, it's easy for me. Like, I hate this guy. You can't just lie about being in 911. And also, like, I saw the coincidence that these two are together because they had like a roast battle with each other, Samuel and Steve when it's easy, and somehow they both managed to lose. Gavin McInnes, don't actually have that much to say about him. I would say it has to be boring, because it's like, that's like a really, really, really big mistake what he did, and he didn't listen to Mike's advice to found the Proud Boys. Yeah, that like I can find him funny occasionally, but it's just like a massive mistake, and he's just never recovered. Mark Normand, I'm going to say boring/annoying. He on Twitter will post like 9 terrible tweets or 10 terrible tweets, and then he'll delete 9 of them, and one of them will stay up. I don't know if it's that extreme, but he's always posting terrible. He's bombing on Twitter, deleting the tweets, and only keeping the good ones up. And even the good ones suck. But yeah, he just fires out a lot of bombs on Twitter. Mark Normand, he can be funny sometimes, though, I will say. Matt Rife, to me, Matt Rife is like women's comedy. In my mind, it's like a certain type of maybe millennial to Gen X kind of white trash woman who is choosing between either going to like some kind of Magic Mike or like Chippendales kind of like, you know, male striptease type thing, or going to Matt Rife. To me, the Venn diagram, it like crosses over completely. Like that's the same type of lady who enjoys that. I don't really have that much to say. It's just not for me. I would say, yeah, I can't stand Matt Rife. It's just not like anything like I would ever be interested in terms of comedy. Kim Congdon, kind of dumb, but the coverage of her is very funny. Like the "You Look Good" girl with her uncle or whatever. It's always funny to see what she's up to. But as a comic, no, I don't find it good. HBO Latina, shout outs. Martina Makota, she is even done, like she's very ditzy. Don't really hear from her that much anymore. I believe she's just been sequestered over in Poland. Her and Buckby, that's where they're at. Buckby looking better than I expected. I saw him recently. He's like lost some weight. But Martina, yeah, just kind of dumb. Michelle Wolf. I saw Michelle Wolf on TikTok recently, and it really pissed me off. 1, her like appearance annoys me, and then 2, she was complaining about like an age gap relationship. Like maybe it was like, what is it, the Red Hot Chili Peppers guy who's like 60 going out for 19-year-old. And I'm not saying that there's not like a criticism that you could have there or whatever, but we don't want to hear it from you, Michelle Wolf. We just don't. Like a woman, there's something so unbecoming and so wrong about a woman this age in this position commenting on an age gap relationship between adults. It's just like, it's not your place, Michelle Wolf. And she just pisses me off, man. Neal Brennan also pisses me off. I would say I can't stand Neal Brennan. Yeah, just a cringe guy. Yeah, don't have that much to say about him though. Dave Landau, co-host, back when he was on Compound. Like, I do believe that he was astroturfing. Like, I believe he had set up a situation where there was like fake comments and fake fan engagement supporting Dave Landau, because how anyone could ever have seen him on Compound and thought this is our guy and actually enjoyed Dave Landau is like beyond me. But then after that, made an even, in my opinion, even bigger blunder by choosing to become like a full-time guy on Crowder. And to me, like the whole thing with Dave Landau, even though he sucked, it's like, well, this is a working comic, that Anthony has a working comic. Dave Landau, he gets gigs, he does shows. You can't do that and then choose to be on Politicano Steven Crowder show. Like, you're now a political guy, you're now a pawn of the whatever, the Republican Party, you're like a political guy now. It seems like the most ridiculous thing to me. I would say I hate it. I can't even bring myself to say I can't stand it, but yeah. And it's a guy, he's like wearing, when he was on Compound, he's wearing like No Effects shirt. He's like a punk, into like punk rock, or he's into rock music, or like, you can't be that guy and then also be Crowder's right-hand man for however long he was. Dante Nero, the rhinoceros. My favorite full voice to do. Don't really hear from him much anymore. I would say boring/annoying. He's good in small doses. Him struggling to type his tweets out are really funny. And any kind of guru like him, he's a dating guru. This guy's a relationship expert, guys. That's very funny to me. But yeah, you don't really hear from him that much. Someone the complete opposite though, Jelly Roll, we hear of too much. I seriously don't go a single day without hearing from Jelly Roll. I see him everywhere. They've just decided, the powers that be, he's got the premium plus PR package. Everyone is going to be aware of Jelly Roll by 2025. It's just mandatory. And I'm really sick of it. This guy is disgustingly large. You just can't be that size. Like, to me, he is more in the realm of Alex Ansel, the guy I mentioned last video I made, like Melton's planet. Rather, he's more in that realm than in, say, Stavros or Melton kind of fat. Like, this guy is my 600-pound life, wearing ridiculous Carhartt 7XL bomber jackets and workwear jackets and chains and shit, and the face tattoo. I'm not down with this whole Jelly Roll look. I really, a social climber as well. Like, if he was a good guy, it all can be forgiven, right? But this is like a social climber hanging out with the worst people as well. I can't stand Jelly Roll. Nick DiPaolo, I would say indifferent, gave us one of the most long-standing kind of bits, I guess, or pieces of kind of references in Redbar, the 444, angel numbers, whatever, shout outs, and then scarcely gets covered. I'm kind of indifferent to him. All right, Bobby Lee. This is a bad guy who kind of similar to Brian Callen in that he gets a pass because of who he's often around. Like Bobby Lee is above Andrew Santino, and Bobby Lee is considered above his wife. Like in Tiger Belly, his wife or ex-wife or whatever, Kayla, is like hated by Fighter and the Kid Reddit people. So Bobby Lee gets a pass. And to me, there was nothing gayer than a Fighter and the Kid fan trying to save Bobby Lee from Kayla, thinking that that's going like it's the same vibe of if a person wants to save iDubbbz from Anissa, thinking that this is like the reality of the situation and not entirely the guy's like choice to actually be like the implication that Bobby Lee has been manipulated into this and is not part of the issue is just crazy to me. He's a bad dude. Terrible stories about him in Tijuana or whatever, notwithstanding, even without that, like it's very clear that this is like a predator type guy, not one that women should really be comfortable around. And I would say I do hate Bobby Lee, although he can be funny at times, all things considered. Chrissy May, physically can't stand looking at this person. Yeah, I just can't stand her. Doesn't really get covered that much. Her trying to like half flirt with Mike when she was first covered on the show, it's really gross. Yeah, don't have that much to say. Luis J. Gomez, not a fool. He has done some done some foolish stuff. Like I think when Chris D'Elia first got exposed, he provided some kind of defense for that. I don't want to say that too certainly, but I just remember that being a thing. Occasionally, like, look, this is a guy, he's trying to run a network. Okay, this is a hustler. He's trying to get ahead. Okay, and he just it's out of ignorance when he messes up. For the most part, I'm pretty confident to say this is a good dude overall. Philip DeFranco, hate this kind of guy, hate these YouTube drama news. Like this is more of a straight YouTube news guy, but I consider him similar to like a Moist Critical or like a Some Ordinary Gamers or whatever these big commentary YouTube channels that I simply can't stand. I think you are lowering the discourse, you are lowering the standard of information and pushing the straight like standard agenda of what is allowed to be talked about on YouTube news, and he is the king of it. This is an ad guy. This guy runs the same as Moist Critical. Both Philip DeFranco and Moist Critical run advertising agencies. Like if you're a fan of these people and you see, oh cool, the guy I support, yeah, he also runs an advertising agency. If you don't like head for the hills, if you don't split when they announce that, I don't know what to say to you. Like it's a conflict of interest in the simplest form to me. It's like the guy who is giving me this information is now also in control of the ads. And he's like in control of the lie segments in the show, of the products that get pushed. Fuck it, he needs to fuck Philip DeFranco. And he's obsessed with his looks to no avail, right? Nobody wants to see a shirtless picture of you no matter how much weight you lose, Philip DeFranco. It's gross. Looks like a mole rat. Chris DiStefano, I wouldn't have had that much to say about him up until his most recent coverage on the show, where he confessed that he uprooted his whole family and moved them to a different area just because he wanted to be in walking distance to a deli, right? That to me is like mental illness signs there. Like there's going to be more stuff coming out with Chrissy D, right? There's and this guy as well, like when he just blew up, he bought like what was it? I don't want to say it was a $250,000. It was like a really expensive watch, and he's like showing it off. This guy doesn't know how to act. He's freaking out. And I guess it's kind of similar to Joe Matarese. Like if my dad was doing this kind of shit, I would be in a bad way, man. Yeah, so I would say hate for Chrissy D or Chris DiStefano. I don't like saying that. Chris DiStefano, we're definitely going to get more out of him. It's just a ticking time bomb, because if he's admitting to that stuff, then yeah, there's going to be more to come. Finally, Brendan Schaub, don't have that much to say about him. You can probably have a coworker wherever you work that has watched an 1.5-hour documentary on the many crimes and indiscretions of Brendan Schaub. Like you don't need me to tell you what's bad about this guy. Just a dumb guy suffering from CTE. I still would say I hate him because, like, definitely, obviously hate him. Like, to be clear, none of this is a defense of him. I just don't have that much to say about it that hasn't already been said. Just like, yeah, lies all the time. Just a retard, basically. All right, so that's my tier list, the Redbar Fools. And if you want to make your own, I'll link it in the pinned comment in the description. Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching.